course, I'm Leslie.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for having me as well. One second, I'm trying to get the screen to share. Does that look all right?
Yeah, it looks good.
Awesome. Well, hello everyone. I am Leslie Kurt and I am a product manager here at Confluent. A little bit about my background. I have worked at 2 different companies and have had 2 different roles at each company. And my bio really tees up my presentation today, as I will be talking about how to navigate an internal career transition. Specifically, I'm going to talk about my most recent internal career transition where I moved from a sales engineer to a product manager role here at Confluent. So first off, I want to provide a little context and background as to what motivated my internal transition. And both times that I made a career transition, it was based on what day-to-day activities made me the happiest at the end of the day. And so throughout my career, I have periodically and consistently checked in and asked myself the following questions. What makes me happy? What do I want to learn? What am I good at? And what challenges me? And so every couple months, I would sit down and write down all the projects, interactions, tasks that answer these questions for me. And as I started to compile this list over time, I realized that this list of things really answered the question of what career path should I take for me. And so if I think back to where I was about a year ago today, I recall some of the things that helped lead me to want to make this transition from sales to product. I had learned that I really liked talking to customers and working with new technologies. I knew that one of my strengths was my empathy and advocating for customers. I knew that I liked solving problems and figuring out how to make a solution work for a customer, but I was also really interested in improving the product and how to influence the direction of the product to improve the experience for the customer. I also knew that I missed building things from back when I was a software engineer, and I wanted to figure out a way to incorporate that back into my day-to-day. And so as I looked at these individual pieces, I realized that these types of activities described the day-to-day role of a product manager. And so I realized that it might be time for a career transition. And so before I made any rash moves to change my career path, I wanted to make sure that this was the right move for me. And so I decided to dip my toes in the product manager pond. I did this by finding more ways to interact with the product managers in my company. When a new product was released, I would reach out to the PM who had launched that product and ask them questions on what it took to build that product, what types of decisions and trade-offs they made, and what their role was in the release. I even collected some customer feedback from some of our different products and presented it to a few product managers to try to put myself in their shoes and see if this was the right role for me. After observing and even trying out some of these day-to-day activities of a product manager, I reflected on the experiences I had had. So I sat down again and asked myself those same 4 questions from before. What makes me happy? What do I want to learn? What am I good at? And what challenges me? It was also important at this point for me to reflect on why I wanted, or if I wanted to make the transition within Confluent or if I wanted to join another company. For me, I really loved the company culture here at Confluent and the direction I could see the product going. I also had a good understanding of the culture of the product team here, and so I could see myself fitting in well with that team. And after reflecting, it became pretty clear to me that this role, product management, was what completed my puzzle, and that I knew that I wanted to stay at Confluent. So I decided to make moves towards an internal transition. The first thing that I did was talk to my manager. This wasn't and isn't an easy conversation, but I knew that transparency was key when navigating an internal transition. A few tips in bringing up this conversation are: 1, expressing interest early. As I was dipping my toes in the product manager pond, I let my manager know that I liked working closely with product management, and I liked kind of completing this feedback loop between our customers and the product team. Second is that internal transitions are beneficial to the company. My experience on the sales team would help provide a unique and valuable perspective to the product team. And third, it was important for me to reassure my manager that having a seamless transition was a priority to me, and that I was willing to put in the work to ensure that the team was left in good hands. So now that I had talked to my manager, it was time to reach out to my network within Confluent and express interest for the new role. But after expressing interest, I realized that it was also important to be patient. With internal transitions, timing was everything. And so my goal was to put myself out there so that if and when an opportunity arose, I would be the first person they would consider for a job. And after a period of time, I was lucky enough that a position opened up. And so I went through the application and the interview process just like any other candidate. I will caveat that interviewing for a position with coworkers you already work closely with is a bit strange, but all in all, it went well and I was offered the job. Now it was time to figure out how to make the transition seamless. I had promised my manager that was a priority for me, and it was. And so one thing that helped me a ton in this process was having a hard stop on my role as a sales engineer and a clear start date for my role as a product manager. I wanted to provide my best self to both teams, and I realized that I couldn't have one foot in both roles and still provide my best work. So I negotiated a start date that would provide me enough time to wrap up loose ends and train my replacement on the sales side, so that when I started my first day on the product team, I could really hit the ground running and devote all of my attention to the new role in my new team. One problem I had not foreseen was the difficulties I would have adjusting to the new role. Over the last 2 years, I had known myself as, and other people had known me as, a sales engineer. And then one day, thanks to my hard transition date, I showed up and was now a product manager. I found myself continuing to play the sales role, just now on the product team. I thought like a sales engineer, I asked sales questions, and I was constantly putting myself back in my old role. And while this was a potentially valuable perspective on my new team, it was not allowing me to embrace the new role. And so I realized that I really had to reframe the way that I thought about problems. And so I watched other PMs on my team and how they thought about problems, phrased questions, etc., in order to kind of reprogram my brain for the new role. Lastly, internal transitions are not easy, and I could not have done it alone. I was extremely fortunate to have many coworkers and friends willing and available to provide me advice, guidance, and reassurance during this process. So thank you to Brandolyn Powell, who had navigated an internal career transition at Confluent before me and provided endless advice on how to navigate the transition. Thanks to Danny Trapphagen, who was a mentor to me from day one at Confluent and has continued to be a mentor to me after the transition. Thanks to Larry McQuarrie, who was my sales engineering manager, for being supportive and helping me pursue the career that I wanted. And to Mike Agnich, who really helped me navigate the product management process and transition. With that, thank you everyone for listening. It's been a pleasure to speak with you all today.
That was really great, Leslie. That was really, I think, really illustrative of how someone can advocate for the role that they want and then get the right help that they need to get there. So we have some questions about, for example, how would you advise a girl geek on finding the support within the company, or if not within her company, if her manager says no, how can this person still be able to gain the skills that they need to become a product manager or a different job?
Yeah, so I think when I was looking for people to provide advice and mentorship during the internal transition, I looked for one, mentors that I'd already had in the company. So I think building those up from the day that you start is important so that you have them, available to you when you need kind of some guidance. The other thing I did was I looked for other individuals within Confluent who had actually gone through the process before, so that I could really understand the inner workings within Confluent and what that process looked like.